What's good, guys? This is Unjolly Ranchers, diving into the shadows of life's unsaid tales. Today's story is absolutely crazy. The cops almost caught me with weed because somebody snitched on me. I hope you're all having a great day, whether you're doing homework, chores, or just gaming. But anyways, let's get into this wild story. So this takes place back in 2018 when your boy was only 14 years old. The day started out pretty normal. I went to the next town over to my buddy D's house. When I got there, he told me that this kid, we'll just call him Randy for story's sake, stole his iPhone and refused to give it back. So the plan was to go over to his house and confront him face to face. But that day, I forgot to bring my BMX bike, so we just walked over to his house. But when we got there, nobody was home, so we ended up trying to call him. But every time we did, it just went straight to voicemail after ringing a couple times, so he was obviously ignoring us on purpose. We ended up just texting him, saying he had one last chance to give us a phone call back, but he just wouldn't respond. So there we both were, really annoyed outside Randy's house, feeling completely hopeless, like we're not gonna get that phone back. We came up with an idea. Now, Randy had a house and then a big garage right next to it, and we knew Randy lived in the garage, so we figured we'd just go in there and look for the phone. Luckily, the door was unlocked, we could just walk right in, so we got to work digging through all of his shit looking for my buddy's stolen phone. After looking for like an hour and a half, we couldn't find it sadly, so we tried calling Randy one last time, but like we expected, he just ignored our call. So there we were, both really pissed off, knowing that we probably wouldn't get the phone back, so we decided we're just gonna take some of his stuff, that way we could either sell it or trade him back for the phone. We ended up finding two PS3s without controllers, a couple nice hoodies, and a Kindle Fire. Now, D's phone was worth like $400 used, and sadly, most of Randy's stuff was just garbage. The whole place was trashed, and what we did find that we could either trade him back or sell just wasn't enough to cover the cost of the phone. But as we looked around some more, we ended up finding a really tall bong, along with a chew cam that had two really dank nugs of weed in it. Once we found that, we kind of just thought to ourselves, you know what, okay, he's paid up. He can either trade us the phone back for everything, or we'll just keep it and sell it to try to get D a new one. So we threw everything in our backpacks, and then we started walking back to D's house. When we got there, we tried calling Randy one last time, but he was still just ignoring us. Now, later in the day was D's middle school dance, and we thought that Randy might be there, so D hopped on his bike and I rode on the pegs behind him to the middle school. When we got there, we just went inside and looked around for Randy for a bit, but he wasn't there, so we went back outside and waited by the entrance hoping he'd show up. As we were waiting outside, this other kid, we'll just call him Jerry, showed up on his sweet BMX bike. We gave him the details on the situation, and he told us that he actually saw Randy earlier that day walking around town, and how he thought he might know where he is, and he told us that he'd be willing to help us look for him. But there was one problem. They both had bikes, but I didn't have one, so I told Jerry that, and he told me, don't worry bro, I've got a plan. You can ride my bike, you guys go up the street a little bit and I'll meet you there. So I kinda just figured he's gonna borrow one of his buddy's bikes, but later in the night I found out he had just stole one from outside the dance. So there we were, three kids riding around town looking for this piece of shit who stole my buddy's phone, looking everywhere in the hopes that we'd find him and trade back his stuff for D's phone. But like after 2 hours of looking around, we just still couldn't find him, so we ended up riding over to our smoke spot that we loved and we sparked up a bowl. After we finished smoking, I got a weird feeling, so I turned to D and said, yo, I've got a really bad feeling. Would you do me a huge favor and hold on to the weed? Now, D was a little reluctant, but my gut has never led us astray to this very day. So he said, yeah, whatever, I guess I can do that. So D zipped open his backpack and threw the chew can full of weed inside, and at this moment, Jerry said he had to go home and told me I could just borrow his buddy's bike and drop it off at the middle school whenever we were done with it. So we dabbed Jerry up and he was on his way home. Then D and I went over to Rosar's to get something to drink and a bite to eat. So there we were at Rosar's, sitting in the food court area on our phones, trying to get a hold of Randy still. Maybe an hour later, Jerry hit us up. He told us he couldn't leave the house, but he wanted us to come over and hang out, maybe play some Call of Duty. So I asked him, do you think you could just sneak out? We're not really in a gaming mood. But he told us he couldn't and that his mom was still awake, but she was okay with us coming over. So we said screw it, we'll be right over. Now, this is where the story really takes a turn for the worse. We got to Jerry's house, walked up the steps, and I knocked on the door. But what laid behind, I would never expect in a million years. After I knocked on that door, it slowly swung open, and behind this door, I was met to the sight of 2 cops staring at me dirty. He then turned around, looked at Jerry and asked him, "Are these the kids?" With guilt in his eyes, Jerry shook his head yes, and the cop stepped outside with another officer behind him. The cop escorted us down the stairs, out to the parking lot, and told us, "Hey, Jerry told us that you were the ones who stole this bike." Dee and I looked up at him, eyes wide, like, "What the fuck? What do you mean? We didn't steal anything." The cop then pulled out a cell phone and showed us a video of Jerry stealing the BMX bike. So I just looked up at him and said, "Are you kidding me? That's obviously Jerry in the video. I didn't even know the bike was stolen." He told me it was a buddy's and he was letting me borrow it for the night. This is ridiculous. The cop then told us, "Well, Jerry's telling us that you boys manipulated him into stealing the bike for you." That's when Dee stepped in and said, "No, he's lying. We never told him to do anything like that. We told him that Z didn't have a bike for the night." He then gave us his bike and told us to go up the road and that he'd meet us there. We thought he was borrowing a buddy's bike. So there we were, shaking in our boots, scared shitless. We were going to get in trouble and arrested for Jerry stealing this bike. The cop then brought Dee inside Jerry's house while I talked to the other one. He asked me, "Do you have anything illegal on you or anything you shouldn't?" My eyes got wide because that's when I remembered I gave Dee the weed to hold on to. I felt so bad and I was so scared. I didn't want my homie to get in trouble for that, but I just looked up at the cop and said, "No, I don't have anything like that on me." The cop then asked me, "So why do you get so anxious when I asked you that?" I just told him, "I've never had a good experience with the cops before, and I get a lot of anxiety talking to the police." I don't know why he didn't believe me, but he ended up telling me to spread my legs and put my hands against the building, and then he patted me down and had me empty my pockets and give him my backpack. He looked through the whole thing and didn't find anything, luckily. Moments later, Dee and the other cop stepped out of Jerry's house and walked back to us. The cop told me, "So Jerry admitted that he did steal the bike, so you guys aren't in that much trouble, but you're still associated with this crime." Now, that right there really pissed me off because we had no idea what Jerry was doing. We were just hanging out with this dude who said he was gonna help us look for Randy so we could get Dee's phone back. So I yelled at the cop and said, "Dude, that is fucking bullshit. We had no idea what he was doing. We thought he was just helping us find the guy who stole my buddy's phone. You were fucked." The cop got super angry when I said this and responded, "Hey, you need to calm down. There is no need to speak to me like that. What's your parents' phone number? We need to call them and let them know what happened before we can let you go." Now, there was no way in hell I was gonna do that. Like, I'm not having my parents misunderstand the situation and let myself get grounded for that shit. So I just gave them fake names using my uncle and aunt's name, and then I gave them random fake phone numbers. The cop then tried calling both the numbers that I gave him, and just to my luck, neither of the phone calls went through. They just went to unset voicemails, so the cop left these 2 random ass people a couple messages saying that their son was with a kid who stole a BMX bike, and that we're outside with him right now, and that they'll be sending us home to my buddy Dee's house. After the cop hung up, he told us that he was gonna drive us to Dee's and let his parents know what happened. But luckily enough, there wasn't room in the trunk to put Dee's bike inside, so he ended up just letting us walk home because we told him it wasn't that far. Now, on our way home, I was speechless at first. Then I realized, shit, they probably searched Dee. Like, how did we not get in trouble? So I turned to Dee and said, "Yo, did they search your bag?" He just looked at me and said, "Nah, they never searched me, why?" That's when I yelled, "Yo, bro, you had the weed in your bag, remember?" And he was like, "Oh shit, bro, you're right, that's crazy. I'm surprised they didn't smell it." That's when I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Bro, they searched my bag." Dee couldn't believe it. Like, they searched my bag and not his. And earlier that night, I had a terrible feeling that Dee should be the one holding on to it for us. It was freaking crazy. We laughed so hard about it, our minds blown that we didn't get caught for it or in any trouble about that bike with how the cops in our area act. But anyways, that's pretty much the end of it. We never went back to Dee's house until the next morning. We just kept riding around town, having a good time, smoking a little bit more weed here and there, and just doing the dumb shit we used to do back then. And that wraps up the end of this story. The moral here is, pick your friends wisely and don't steal shit from people. It's messed up. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't. Stay tuned for more on Jolly Tales. Until next time, peace.